with the NBA being a perpetual news cycle, I think the interesting story is Mr. Bogdan Bogdanovic and Josip Nurkic. Was a video we made yesterday. Supposedly they've had talks about Nurkic, and you would assume that after that report came out from Gerald Bourget, I believe it to be exact, Mark Stein then said that the Suns did have interest in Bogdan Bogdanovic. They're a team that would benefit from any more three-point shooting they could get. Bogdan is a guy who can play backup point guard, can be a starting shooting guard or a wing. He can play 1 through 3. He's not the defender he used to be, but he's not a turnstile. He's a secondary playmaker who has 2 more years left on his deal, but the third year is a team option. So next year he basically becomes an expiring contract. And I'm under the impression personally, the way that I view this going down is if Gershon Yabusele is being shopped and Bogdan Bogdanovic is being shopped, there's so much news going around, but what are we taking away from these 2 separate trades? People want to save money. Nurkic makes a little bit more than Bogdan, so the Suns, obviously being a second apron team, have to trade for less money. Boom, they save money. Clint Capella makes more money than Nurkic, so in my mind, this is definitely going to be a 3-team trade. Clint Capella going somewhere, and probably that third team sending out a contract to the Hawks and eating Capella's, while the Suns take on Bogdan Bogdanovic and they send Nurkic, and Nurkic ends up on the Hawks. And I think that makes sense because Nurkic will back up Onyeka, and then you trade him in the offseason as he becomes an expiring. Bogdan gives you more depth on the Suns, and whatever third team. I know we talked about it yesterday. We said the Pistons would give up Tim Hardaway and Simone Fontecchio and get a first-round pick. They'd give up 3 or 4 second-round picks because they get a first-round pick and consolidate their a bunch of their second-round picks, send 3 to like the Suns and 1 to the Hawks, something like that, where everybody just kind of wins. Because Bogdan Bogdanovic had a rough year. He's listed as not with the team allegedly, and it seems like he's just been in Quinn Snyder's doghouse. And he struggled from 3 this season, even though he has a track record of being a near 40% three-point shooter. But even though he's still shooting 37% on the field, which isn't great, 40% is usually what he is, close for 3. So it's not like I feel like he's in a slump. He just doesn't fit this team. His field goal percentage 37, 3-point 30, rebounds a game just under 3, 2 assists and a steal a night. And the Suns are 14th in points per game. Their field goal percentage is 11th with 47.5%, 12th best 3-point percentage with 37.7, and they are the 8th worst rebounding team and 13th best assist team. Now, I think their 3-point shooting, their rebounding, and ball movement would all benefit from bringing in Bogdan Bogdanovic. He's going to be a guy who's going to be able to come in and really keep the ball moving and be a connector, a play facilitator, and a guy who can kickstart fast breaks. So the other team is the Miami Heat, which I love to hear that Miami is interested in Bogdan Bogdanovic. And I would not be surprised if this news is because, what if the third team is Miami instead of Detroit? And Miami's a team that is the 9th worst points per game scoring offense with just under 111 points per game. 11th worst field goal percentage at 45.7%. 16th best or 16th worst 3-point percentage, 36.7. 14th worst rebounding team and 13th worst passing team. I think the Heat would love the additional shooting and playmaking, especially off the bench. I think Bogdan Bogdanovic would give them a scoring punch, a playmaker, and spacing, as a team like Miami is really trying to make a playoff push as we get closer to the playoffs. And he's somebody that I think could be a contributor. Plus, in the past, Miami with Goran Dragic has had success with ball handlers of his style. So to me, it just makes a lot of sense if you are the Miami Heat or even the Suns to go out and to make trades, to do deals that are going to bring you somebody, for example, a Bogdan Bogdanovic, that yeah, he has multiple years left on his deal, but in my mind, I feel like you're going to be able to set yourself up pretty nicely with a player who could be moved again if necessary. And I think this team is doing a good job of slow rolling the Jimmy Butler sweepstakes, because I think they have realized they rather evaluate everything instead of just going crazy and making a deal that isn't going to benefit them in the long run. Because I personally believe there is no risk of losing him to free agency. And you're like, why? No one's going to pay him $52 million. He's going to pick up that option, and you're going to have to go through this to trade him again in the offseason. So if that's the case, I mean, I think they're perfectly fine just running this back to the offseason if necessary. And that's where I want to hear your guys' thoughts. If you guys are a fan of the Heat, what would you do? And I do think the Suns might have an easier time getting him, but it's definitely a thought to think about.
Yo, what's going on, guys? And today we're going to be talking about a report that the Atlanta Hawks have had discussions with the Phoenix Suns regarding Yusuf Nurkic, and that it was also put out that the Hawks have made Bogdan Bogdanovic available. And Nurkic is obviously basically getting a bunch of DNPs. He's not even playing. He's expected to be moved, but they're not in a rush because they actually believe they could get better value for him in the offseason because he becomes an expiring then. However, Bogdan Bogdanovic could be arguably one of the better players they could get for Yusuf Nurkic currently, which would give him a player who can play 1 through 3, be a secondary playmaker, a shooter, and he's actually a guy who can kickstart transitions and isn't a bad defender. Now, he has struggled with injuries, specifically with his knee over the years, and then this year he's only played 24 games. He's averaging 10 points on 37% from 3 rebounds and 2 assists. But with the Hawks, during those years, he's actually been about a 15-point per game scorer, 4 rebounds and 3 assists a night, near 40% from 3. Like, actually, like a really useful player when healthy. But as I said, he's a guy that this year been a little bit rough, and he had signed a 4-year, $68 million deal with the Hawks a few years ago. And at this point, he has, after this season, 1 year under his control. And then in 26 to 27, it becomes a team option. So it basically becomes an expiring deal after this season, because any normal team would probably more than likely decline. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts before we continue today's video. Do you guys like the idea of it'd probably be Yusuf Nurkic and a pick for Bogdan Bogdanovic? And I think it's actually a decent deal, because for what the Hawks, like, I wouldn't be surprised if the Hawks tried to find a Clint Capella suitor and turn this into a 3-team trade where they send Bogdan to the Suns. Suns send maybe Yusuf Nurkic to the Hawks with a pick going to the 3rd team that is trading Clint Capella, or trading for Clint Capella, and that said 3rd team gives up multiple 2nd-round picks and gives a couple to either the Hawks or Suns. Like, both teams walk away, the Suns and Hawks, with 2nd-round picks, as that way the Suns can keep the draft, like having draft assets and not just waste it would be a waste of 1st-round pick for Bogdan Bogdanovic. No offense to him. But by the way, I didn't say who was reporting this, but all this report is coming from the Bogdan news is from Mark Stein, and the news regarding Yusuf Nurkic is coming from the Arizona Republic. Dwayne Rankins is saying the Suns are looking to make a move and that they have had ongoing discussions. So you guys saw those at the beginning of the video. They are now linked in the description, or as they should be. But yeah, I think if they're trading for Josip Nurkic, they definitely have to have a deal for Clint Capella lined up, because I can't imagine that they would just go ahead and trade for Josip Nurkic and have Clint and Josip Nurkic and Onyeka Okongwu, and they're still waiting for Larry Nance to be healthy. So yeah, I think the whole thing for the Hawks, they probably would rather churn Bogdan and Clint Capella into, obviously draft capital, and then allowing yourself to bring in Josip Nurkic gives you time in the summer to trade his contract, which would be is like $4 million cheaper than Clint Capella. So not only does the Atlanta Hawks gain some potentially a draft asset in this scenario, but they also get themselves a player that will be on an expiring deal in the summer that, let's say, they pair with a first round pick. They could get themselves the ability to just, put themselves in a position to be able to go ahead and use their draft capital this year if they wanted, for example, and trade back or trade Josef Nurkic's contract for a player of equal, if not better, value. So I think something along those lines could be something to watch for. And yeah, that's what makes the most sense to me, because I wouldn't have to assume they're not creating a logjam. And from what I understand with the current CBA, it's easier to actually complete a multi-team trade than it is to complete a just straight up 2-team trade, because the more teams you have in terms of like salaries to play around with, it'll be easier to trade. So to me, I think something like that would make the most sense. Let me hear your thoughts. So, for example, a hypothetical trade would be the Detroit Pistons, who the Pistons says they don't want to be like a salary dump team, but they're trying to be a playoff team. And I think if they could get a big man like Clint Capella to be a rental, and they have way too many second round picks due to Troy Weaver having this weird fascination of them. So in this situation, we know that they want to trade Tim Hardaway Jr., and Simone Fontecchio is clearly not part of this team's rotation. Plus, Simone Fontecchio would fit Quinn Snyder's MO for what he wants. So if you put Tim Hardaway Jr., Simone Fontecchio, and a second round pick to the Hawks, and then you package 2 second round picks and you take on Clint Capella. So 2 second round picks go to the Suns, 1 goes to the Hawks. Pistons receive the least valuable of the first round picks the Suns have to walk away. So the Pistons walk away with the first round pick, the Suns walk away with 2 second round picks, and the Hawks walk away with 1 second round pick. The Hawks walk away with Josip Nurkic, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Simone Fontecchio. And Simone and Josip Nurkic become expiring contracts next year. The Suns receive 2 second round picks and Bogdan Bogdanovic for giving out Josip Nurkic and a first. The Hawks give up Bogdan Bogdanovic and Clint Capella, and they walk away with a second round pick. Simone Fontecchio and Josip Nurkic, who both have 1 year remaining on their deals. Simone makes 7.6. Josip is making like 19. And then Tim Hardaway would be an expiring, which also helps his team still remain a bit competitive. And the Pistons get front court help with Clint Capella, and they get a first round pick, and they get to get rid of some of the excessive amount of second round picks that they have. That deal actually works under the salary cap. So I really want to hear your guys' thoughts. Would that be something that you guys would do or not? I think it's interesting. So yeah, I think it doesn't have to be that deal, but those are teams that I feel like would all be interested in making something along those lines work, as they all gain cap flexibility, as everybody, even if the players do have a second year on their deals, the team they become expiring. So it works out. So I want to hear your thoughts.